matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA096.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Taylor, we are up. We are live. I'm at my standing desk. It is an exciting day. How are you?
Good. I'm sitting on my couch, wrapped in a blanket because it's very windy and this blanket just came out of the dryer. So I was like, when in Rome, sit under a warm blanket.
You are cozied up.
Cozy. And I'm making a blanket while I'm sitting in this warm blanket. I mean,
I
unbelievable
feel
cozy.
like I'm not saying anything negative about you, but
Whoa.
I think me and you are two people who becoming older suits us more
Yeah, yeah,
than
yeah.
being young.
Absolutely. I mean, I was really good at being young, but I feel like I'm I'm not angry about getting old,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
More power to us.
Yeah. Like good for us. Not everybody gets to be old.
Amen. Do
You
you want to go
know?
ahead and intro us?
Yes. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Doomed to Fail, where the podcast that brings you history's most notorious failures, epic disasters, interesting stories, whatever. I'm Taylor, joined by Farz. Farz, how are you? Besides standing and wearing your glasses.
I'm just getting used to wearing these things. It's funny because you don't realize your vision is off until you wear
Hmm.
glasses. And the way I describe it is like it just turns everything into 4K.
Yeah, I know I need them. I think I need bifocals, honestly,
These are
because
bifocals.
yeah, that's what I need. I'm going on Thursday to the eye doctor, but in the past like 6 months, my eyesight's gotten a lot worse. But I mean, I haven't needed them until now. It's bound to happen. So
Yeah.
I think I'll be okay. I think Miles might need them, so Miles and I are gonna go on Thursday. But yeah, I
Good.
think it's gonna be like I think Miles might be like, "What the hell, Mom? Everything's in 4K now." Like you said. Like I think it might be like, "I've needed these for a long time. You're a terrible mother." But we'll see what
Um,
happens.
the definitely do the bi so these originally I got like regular, like I just had one lens in it and it was for reading close. And
Hmm.
then I would wear them at a restaurant to read like the menu. Then the server would come over and I couldn't see him; it was blurred. And then I'd like have to take them off and then put them back on. Like it's
Yeah, yeah,
really
yeah.
like you got to definitely do the bifocals.
That's what I'm gonna
Definitely
do. I'm sure that's what they're gonna tell me that I need, and I'm sure that's what I'll do.
cool.
Cool.
So I'm gonna tell us a story today. Are you excited?
Cool. I am.
Okay. So I'm gonna cover a couple. Their name is Tom and Eileen Lonergan. And I bet you that nobody knows their name, but everybody probably knows their story. Do you know their name?
I don't. Lonergan does not sound familiar, but
You're gonna
tell
know
me
their
more.
story. So our story starts in 1987 when Eileen Haynes, at that time, was a freshman attending Louisiana State University when she met a 22-year-old Thomas Lonergan. After dating briefly, they would get married on June 24th of 1988, like super briefly, like a year.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Shortly after that, they would enlist in the Peace Corps and they served as volunteers for community development projects in Fiji. Um, I could not find a single instance or record or report of these people being employed at all, which makes me wonder why did they waste time in college? But they, as far as I can tell, they basically were just like they strike me as just free spirits where like whatever, I'll just eat whatever I find and then I'll
Hmm.
go work somewhere for a weekend and that'll be enough money to like go to my next place. Like they're just like that type of couple, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. Like anyone who thinks that van life is cool.
Yeah.
It's not. You're living in a van.
I know I wrote down think Christopher McCandless, not jet setting, not like Paris Hilton, like that. They like to travel, but not the way
Yeah, yeah,
humans
yeah.
like to travel.
Indeed.
So in 1998, they were on the final leg of their backpacking trip. They're somewhere around 30. So this would have been when Tom was 33 and Eileen was 28. So this is 1998. They're on the final leg of a backpacking trip, and they were in Queensland, Australia. And the thing that everyone in the 90s wanted to do while they were in Queensland was to go to see the Great Barrier Reef.
Hmm.
I remember this time period, Taylor, because my parents got me the first CD-ROM version of like the Britannica, whatever.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Encyclopedia Britannica.
Yeah, and like the
Oh,
cover art for all of it was coral reefs. It's like this isn't real. This can't really exist. Isn't it crazy? Because like we had like very limited access to like the world's knowledge,
Hmm.
and you didn't know this stuff really existed. And then I guess the world found out and became a
Isn't
big
it?
deal.
Well, how lucky are we that we get to live in the same time as the Great Barrier Reef before it disappears?
I'm going to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
So, in 1981, the Great Barrier Reef was established as a World Heritage Site. Within a decade or so, scientists would sound the alarms that things like global warming were having an effect on the reef, specifically El Nino, if you recall El Nino.
Hmm. Hmm.
That occurred in
That's still a
1998.
thing, or was it like one storm?
Well, it's a storm that happens when certain conditions are met, so it
Got it.
can happen again. But the one that happened in 1998 resulted in like mass coral bleaching. So what ended up happening
Hmm.
was a storm passed right over it, and it was so ferocious that it pulled all the algae that lives on the coral out of the coral, which
Hmm.
results in coral bleaching. So
And coral bleaching means they're dead. It's just like a
they're
skeleton
dead.
now.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that basically the long story short is that like the whole world basically learned what the Great Barrier Reef was and was obsessed
Hmm.
with it because I remember this
Hmm.
so vividly. It's so like, it's
Hmm.
so old that I remember this incredibly vividly. So in 1998, tourism in this area was incredibly high. About 1.6 million people that year visited the reef and generated about $1 billion worth of income for the local economy. So it was like a big, big deal. There were estimates that approximately 600 permitted operators were authorized by the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority to operate around 1,500 vessels to take people in and out scuba diving, doing daily trips, and whatever, like that kind
I'm
of
like
stuff.
literally getting nervous while you're talking because I feel like I know what's going to happen and I kind of want to throw up.
Good. Well, I'm glad I can still get to you.
Okay, keep going.
So on January 25th, 1998, Tom and Eileen booked a round trip bus ride from a hostel they were staying at, which was 40 minutes away, to the coast where this specific dive company was called the Outer Edge Dive Company. And they were going to go scuba diving at three different dive sites. They were going to start at St. Crispin's and end in Fish City, which sounds really fun.
That's cute.
The boat they were on carried a group of 26 passengers, including the Lonergans, about 38 miles northeast of their location in Queensland, deep into the Great Barrier Reef. They would conduct two dives without a hitch. So they would do a dive, then they would get everybody on the boat. They would go to a different dive site. They do a dive, get everybody on the boat, go to the next site, so on and so forth. So they're on the third dive site by 3 p.m. local time.
I literally am going to Amazon right now to buy more deodorant because it just reminds me that I need it because I'm getting sweaty. Continue.
It's great. And if any of y'all need deodorant, please go on Amazon and shop there as well.
Yeah.
Um, so they were at the third dive site at 3 p.m. local time, and then around 3:30 is when the dive vessel turned on its engines and started kind of making preparations to head back to shore. It's worth noting that this is also a pretty big tell to anyone who's in the water because when the engines run on a boat, water, sound travels pretty far in water, and in theory, you should be able to hear the ship or the boat running its engines. In this
Hmm.
case, the ship idled for about 15 minutes before it head back into sea. The safety practices for this day were that anytime a passenger went into or out of the water, they were supposed to log in or log out by checking their names on or off of the list.
Hmm.
They ended up going back to shore with all 24 passengers.
Mm.
You
I
see
know
the
you said
problem.
I know you said 26.
So that's actually the end of the story. Like so that is the end of the Lonergan story. But we'll continue from there. So what ended up happening after this was that day, that was the last day trip they were going to have. The crew of this dive company, they reached shore. They noticed that after all the passengers had left, there were shoes and backpacks still on the vessel. And for some reason, they didn't think this was a big deal. They basically were like, somebody forgot it. They took this stuff, put it in their office, like somebody will come back and claim this stuff later.
Oh my God.
The crew was then approached by the driver of the bus company the couple had hired to take them back to their hostel. And the driver was like, "Hey, where are these people?" And apparently the crew was super dismissive, saying,
Hmm.
"Hey, they probably just ran off with somebody else. Like they this is what you do. Like when you're backpackers, you're travelers, you see people,
Hmm.
you go do stuff." 2 days after the
Oh
diving
my
trip,
God.
employees decided, let's see what's in these backpacks that are just sitting here in this office. And they found passports, money,
Oh my God.
travel arrangements, itineraries, like things that you don't leave behind casually.
Yeah, no, of course not. This is a sign to always be the best person on the tour and ask a lot of questions so that
Yeah.
everyone knows that you are there. Make eye
Yeah.
contact, be BFFs with that tour guide.
How to be the best person on the tour, just
I'm
sitting
the
there
best person
smiling
on this
like
tour. This is so
this
interesting. I have some extra questions for you.
this sounds like something I would
You must
say
have
to
worked so
myself
hard.
seriously.
100%. Yeah.
So authorities were sort of notified immediately. So essentially, the team at this dive company realized something terrible is going on.
Right. Oh shit.
They had the hostel information. They called the hostel, and the hostel operator said, "We haven't seen this couple since they left to come on your dive." And they're like, "Oh my God!" Apparently, the hostel owner is the one who actually called the authorities.
Wow.
And once the authorities were called, the Coast Guard, other ships in the area, all kind of descended onto the area. This would be about 56 hours or so after they had entered the water. So we're at hour 56. So we're on the solid third day. And eventually, after about 4 or 5 days, the search was called off because they were like, scientifically, it is impossible for any human being to have survived out there this long. There's no reason to keep going.
I mean, if they can't find like airplanes in the ocean, they can't find two people, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Well, the good news is that this part of the ocean isn't super deep.
Mm-hmm.
And also it's well trafficked, right? Like you're the Great Barrier Reef.
Mm-hmm.
There's 1,500 vessels in and out of the
How
area.
how big is the Great Barrier Reef?
I don't know.
Hmm. I'm gonna look it up. Someone email us. We don't know.
We don't know, and there's no way that we could find this out. You'd have
Nope.
to pull up your Britannica CD-ROM,
Get that
and
CD-ROM going.
so eventually, some items belonging to them would be discovered or wash ashore. So fins, diving equipment, gear, and a diving slate was actually found. And a diving slate is like an oil pen with like a little
Hmm.
thing that you could write on, and it's a way to communicate with someone while you're underwater. And the diving slate read, "To anyone who can help us, we have been abandoned on Agincourt Reef by MV Outer Edge,
Nice.
25 Jan 98, 3 p.m. Please help us. Come to rescue us before we die. Help." And, some people thought this could be a hoax. It might not really be theirs. Maybe somebody just planted it. But apparently, they did a bunch of testing on the kind of algae that was growing on it, how long that algae would have taken to grow on it, like the kind of equipment that was being used. They determined that, yeah, this is almost certainly theirs. So,
Hmm.
and that's kind of it in terms of we have no idea what really happened to them. The bodies were never actually discovered, but we have theories.
Hmm.
So, there's three theories here. Theory number one, that is the most probable, would be simple dehydration and exposure to the elements. So
Hmm.
they obviously had no provisions to sustain themselves while they're adrift. They had no, food or water or anything along those lines. Under the best conditions, a human body can go 5 to 7 days before dying of dehydration. So you could go that long without drinking. But the conditions
Hmm.
under which you could survive or the environment has to be super cold, as in no sweating. So Taylor, you would be dead immediately with the
No,
amount of
I'd be
sweating you're doing.
sweating immediately because I'd be fucking terrified.
And on top of that, you'd have to be exerting zero force. And in that situation, you could survive that amount of time, which is the amount of time they basically searched for them for. Right? Like, they were like,
Hmm.
we're on day 8. Like it is physically impossible for anybody to be alive. But these guys were in the southern hemisphere during the winter, or sorry, during their summer. And the
Right.
ambient temperature would have been 73 to 91 degrees with a humidity of 70 to 80% average. So they would have been suffering dehydration like pretty quickly
Because it was warm.
because it was
Yeah.
warm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were also in full dive gear,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
which they actually took off. At least Eileen took off her dive gear. And there's a bunch of theories as to why she could have done this. It could have been delirium, but it also could have been she was like, I want to die. Like I just want to like just take
Yeah.
me. The other theory, which could also be possible, has to do with sharks. So the Great Barrier Reef is home to two sharks you do not want to cross paths with. One is the
Hmm.
tiger, and the other is the white tip shark. So uh, Tiger sharks are like pretty much the most dangerous sharks when it comes to humans.
Hmm.
It's sort of tied with a great white shark, and it's kind of hard to calculate and determine which one is actually the single most dangerous. The reason being, tiger sharks apparently attack humans to eat them.
Oh,
Like they're not being ambiguous about what they're doing, trying to attack you. They want to
they're
consume your
not like
body.
protecting their young or like whatever. They're just like, you look delicious.
Exactly. So great whites, whenever a human gets bit by a great white, generally speaking, they're trying to test to see if we're edible or not.
I
And
kind of feel like the great white thing is overplayed because of Jaws.
well, great whites actually kill more people than any other shark. So
Oh, they do.
that's true. But it's it's a little bit different. Like, if you get bit by a great white, like you could still technically survive because it's not there to eat you. It's there to test whether it can eat you. And then usually they don't because we're not fat enough. They need
Mm.
fatty things to eat. So like they go after seals and stuff, but humans generally don't have enough fat for them to be satisfied with it. But a tiger shark will sit there and just eat you.
I'm
So
just that's so funny because I just can imagine like getting bit by a great white and being like, he thinks I'm skinny.
it's a that's a little compliment that little shark gave you.
Oh, he thinks I'm thin. Good. That's good.
Um And then the other part is white tips. So white tips will also attack humans. They're most famous for attacking plane crash survivors and shipwreck
God.
survivors. So that's where you'll encounter them most frequently. And so you could run into that. But these two between these two theories, this is what the coroner ultimately determined. If you were to look up the report on their cause of death, it's possible death due to dehydration and or shark attack is what it would say. There's a stupid theory, which is that they fake their death, and that is mostly based on what they found of Thomas's writings later on because they had his like poetry in his backpack. He had written about wanting to die because what he would say is he was ready to die because he's seen everything that's beautiful in this world and it's time to go. But that just sounds like hippie stuff. Like that just sounds like a stupid
Yeah.
hippie, Like it's just like woozy woo woo. Like I don't know.
Hmm.
There's also no evidence that they would have done this intentionally. Some have pointed out to the fact that, hey, you know what it is? Kind of like what we were talking about a little bit earlier before we started recording this podcast. When people say shit,
Hmm.
it's once it's out there into the ether, it's so easy to find facts for and against that thing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's out there, and so people will say that, hey, there was these pontoons that were stationed all around the Great Barrier Reefs. The reason was that with all these 1,500 vessels that are coming and going from the Great Barrier Reefs, they don't want to go park in the reef because it could be dangerous to the reef. So they have these
Right.
pontoons that are positioned, and you just pull up the pontoon. Then you have one anchor point that never moves because they're permanent pontoons.
Hmm.
And so people on the internet are like, well, they probably killed themselves because they could have found one of these pontoons and if you're in the middle
No.
of the ocean, it's
Yeah.
dark, you're hungry, you're thirsty, you're scared.
There are sharks nibbling at your
There's sharks
feet.
probably like at the very least sharks hitting your legs underneath you. And then what are you supposed to do? Look off into the distance and see if you notice like a barge and maybe that barge is one that you can go like you wouldn't
And they
think
have
that
to be,
clearly.
I mean, I don't think I could tread water for 5 days, right?
You probably no.
Like
You
they
you'd be
probably
dead.
retired.
Well, you probably wouldn't be able to tread water for like a day. Like you'd
Right.
probably
Like you
be
have to
like
sleep.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's at least my perspective on this is like even if there were pontoons like 500 feet away, which we know there wasn't, but if there was pontoons even that close to them, can you really blame someone for not finding it? Like, I mean,
Yeah, I also imagine like you're moving so much too, like up and down on a wave that like even
yeah.
if it's I don't know.
I've
Like even
also
like we went to the beach in Puerto Rico and like I jumped into a couple waves. One of them knocked me over, like all funny. It was like fun. But that night, like several hours later when I went to bed and closed my eyes, I could feel the ocean moving, you know?
yeah.
Like it you would be just I don't know.
I've done closed mask snorkeling before in like an area of Florida where it's like, you can go touch the bottom. Like it's not that big of a deal.
Hmm.
Um, and I remember thinking to myself when I did that, that I was shocked at how far away the boat was from where I thought it
Yeah.
was. I like
Yeah.
would look up and be like, "Oh, the boat's gonna be right above me," and it's like, "Oh my God, I gotta like swim quite a ways to get to the boat."
Yeah, you move so quickly without even knowing. Even when you're like 20 feet out in the water and all of a sudden you look up and like your umbrella is further away than you thought it was.
Yep.
Like that
Yep.
happens all the time too. Yeah.
So authorities in this case, they obviously investigated the Outer Edge Dive Company, and it was revealed that one, they didn't use the log in, log out method consistently. It
Hmm.
was kind of like a choose your own adventure situation with the crew that was responsible for checking in passengers on that given day. But they also did have a head count method, which is exactly what it sounds like. And what they found was they double counted a couple that was already on the boat.
Yeah,
So
that's what they did in the movie, the
open
what's it called?
water.
Open Water. That's also
Yep.
what they did in Home Alone. That's how Kevin got left behind.
That's how in part two or one? Part two.
One.
One. Okay. The folks the crew actually thought they had 26 passengers on board. Like they weren't like sociopaths like leaving these people out there. There's a
Right.
guy, the owner of the vessel and the owner of the company, this guy named Jeffrey Nairn, who he was the captain that day as well, and he was actually charged with manslaughter or what they call unlawful killing in Australia. He was acquitted of these charges because his defense argued that keeping counts up to date was a crew responsibility and it would just get passed around to the different members of the team. Like the captain's not responsible for everything that happens on the boat. I mean, he is.
Yes. Yes, he is.
I know, but in this case, the argument was in this case. Well, yeah, the argument was that in this case, you can't hold him responsible because he wasn't actually responsible for doing the activity of counting heads.
Dumb. He's responsible for making sure the people who do it are responsible. That's why you are the boss.
Well, the other reason why he wasn't found guilty was because
Like, I don't know if he should go to jail, but I also feel like the captain is nothing but the boss of the ship.
yeah, yeah. Well, so here's the other piece of it. So part of your accountability in any industry has to do with what the reasonable standards for your industry are, right?
Hmm.
Like if you're doing like I'm making stuff up, but if the reasonable standards to be like an Uber driver is to take 100 hours of Uber driving courses
Hmm.
and you did 100 hours, but then you killed someone, then you would look
Right.
to like, hey, like you did all the things you were supposed to do, and then
Hmm.
this thing was outside of like the industry
Expectation or
standards, and that was
whatever.
the
Yeah.
case in this situation. There's so many dive companies operating here, and they all had this same kind of check in, check out head count method. And they're like, well, he did what the industry expected him to do. It just didn't
Yeah.
work this time.
It just didn't work that one time.
Yeah.
I know. I always tell people at work, like, we're not brain surgeons. We can fix anything, Like, if anyone messes up, like, we can always fix it. It's not like we can kill someone, but like jobs like that, where like being a lifeguard or like those things, they make you're like, if I fucked up, someone could die.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's scary.
In this situation, a fine was levied against Outer Edge Dive Company, and then the company had to go under, and it does not exist anymore.
Seems fair.
Which good probably.
Yeah.
And
Did
they made a
everyone
movie
else
about it.
get better at it?
They
Did the
they
industry
did
standard
institute,
change?
yeah, they did institute new standards for the
Good.
rest of the dive companies that are in the area. I don't recall exactly what that is, but it's probably something along the lines of just pinky promise us that you're counting your passengers
Yeah, like for real this time.
for real this time.
And I
And
also
they
feel like everybody would be a better passenger because they want to do that thing like, don't you fucking leave me.
just got to do the Taylor method, which
Yes.
is ask questions, be as annoying as possible.
I'm
Every
following all the
question.
rules. You know what? I'm gonna go diving. Let me leave my wedding ring with you, and you make sure to give it back to me when I get on the boat after.
I kind of love that. I mean, I don't know though. The passport didn't work for these guys,
I know, that's true. I'm
which
gonna
you
write
need
my
a
name on your
passport more
hand.
than a
You
wedding
know
ring.
what? I brought my Sharpie. I'm gonna write my name on your hand, and it says, "Don't forget Taylor." And then we'll be
I also
ring it.
think Taylor, like we're fortunate that we're kind of distinct looking people. Like we don't look a lot like. Well, I don't know. I guess you look a little bit like Christina Ricci, but like I don't
Oh,
really look
thank
like
you.
anybody.
Hmm.
Um,
I said, well, I'm always, this is stupid, but like when we do like, like an AI picture of someone, mine never look like me. And I'm like, I'm just so average that like you can't make it look like me. And Juan, my husband, was like, maybe you're just so above average that no one can even figure it out in AI. I was like, that's very nice. But like, I just don't have the most average face ever that like, whenever I do a little like emoji, it's always just like, oh, there's a white girl with brown hair.
I just said you look distinct.
I know. Thank you. I'm saying I heard that from you and Juan this week, and I feel better
Well,
because I was feeling bad about myself.
there you go.
Thank
And
you.
now, and all you need now as a compliment is for that little great white shark bite, and then you'll be
Ooh,
good.
you know what we could do is we could use those stickers that have yours and mine faces on them and bring them. And then like I'll cross you out if you're not with me. So I'll be like, here's a picture of me, and this is my friend Farz, but he's not here. So I'm gonna cross him out. Me, I'm the person that you need to make sure gets off this mountain or on this boat or blah, blah, out of this cave. Thank you.
Please, please. We need the co-host. So yeah, that's the story. Their bodies were never found.
God, what a way to go. That's
And they made
awful.
a movie about it. You mentioned the name of the movie. It's called Open Water. It came out, I think, in 2003, 2004, something like that.
I was also thinking about Open Water too. Have you seen that one?
I haven't seen either.
Okay, so Open Water is like really scary. It's exactly what you're saying. Like, they like or they are out there a couple days or whatever, and there's like sharks and stuff, and eventually I think that they just like succumb. They just like let themselves get it go under. But Open Water 2 is one where I always think about this when I'm on a boat. It's because it was like kind of a big boat and it's like a f group of friends and a baby. And they're all kind of like hanging out. And one of the ladies puts the baby to sleep and she's standing on the edge of the boat and a guy like tackles her and brings her into the water. So they're all laughing. They're all in the water. It's super fun. But they never put the ladder down and they can't get back on the boat. And the baby's crying and they just like, it's like a really, I don't think I've watched the whole thing because I got gross out or I Wikipedia'd it or something. But the whole point is they jump off the boat and they can't get back on it.
I've never thought of that. Yeah, if you jump off a boat, how do you get back on?
You gotta have a ladder out because you can't climb up a boat.
So what do they do?
I can't remember what happens at the end.
So I actually thought about watching Open Water for this, but then I realized like it's all fake because we never
Yeah.
found their bodies. Like we have no idea what happened to them.
I mean, I feel like it's a pretty good guess. They definitely do the like they show the counting thing and then like they're like spend a little bit of time being like, oh, they'll come back for us. You know? Like they probably for at least a couple hours were like, I'm sure they're on their way, you know?
God, when you lose that hope, that's gotta be the worst part.
Mm-hmm. Because in the beginning, you're like, there's literally no way they're gonna wait 2 days before they open up our backpacks, you know?
Or even like a minute after they realize the backpacks were there. But
Yeah.
um okay, Open Water 2 sounds fascinating though. Okay.
Yeah.
Um
Ugh.
cool. Well, that's my story, Taylor. You got anything for us?
I do actually. So it's Wednesday today, but we released our episode on polio on Monday, and then I released an episode with my dad today. Did you listen to it? It's
I didn't
cute. It's
listen
10
to it
minutes.
actually, and I was gonna say that we probably should wait to release this on like Thursday.
Sure, whatever. But my family liked it, so that was cute. But Kincaid, my brother, clarified some stuff that we said about chickenpox and shingles. So if you have had chickenpox as a kid, then you can get shingles as an adult. If you did not have chickenpox, you cannot get shingles. But if you have the chickenpox vaccine, you have that tiny chance of getting shingles. So if you're like never exposed to chickenpox and you get it as an adult, I think it's worse when you're older, but it's not shingles. It's different. It's chickenpox. So once you've
Okay.
had chickenpox, you are susceptible to getting shingles, but you can't get the shingles vaccine until you're 50.
Can you get shingles before you're 50?
Yes.
Hmm.
But you can't get the vaccine until you're 50, but then you're vaccinated from all of it. Because then I remember I had the chicken pox when I was little for sure. Like I remember it. My parents remember it. But when I was pregnant with Miles, they did a blood test and they were like, "Oh, you need the chickenpox vaccine because you're not immune." And I was like, "Okay, I'll take it, whatever." But um, my immunity didn't last.
Sorry, you said that so the kids don't have vaccines for chickenpox. They just have to get it.
No, no, no. They have the vaccine now.
They do. Okay.
hmm But like my brothers, so there's 5 kids in my family. I'm the oldest. Decker's 10 years younger than me. Kincaid's 12 years younger than me. And by the time Decker and Kincaid were born, they got the vaccine. But Blair, Stratton, and I all got chickenpox.
Got it. Got it.
You
Well,
know,
lucky them. Or lucky us. We went the tough route, you know?
I
We're
got to take
tough
that
guys.
oatmeal bath. It's a lot.
Yeah,
Great.
I got a bike. I got one of those Huffies
Oh,
that has a radio on it.
hmm
It was like the coolest thing back then. Nobody had that.
Cute.
Yeah. That was very cool.
Oh, I love that for you. Very stranger things of you.
Sweet. Anything else to report?
No, that's it. We're growing on TikTok because I'm doing like 5 TikToks a day because I'm going over all of our episodes. I don't know if you noticed. And then I'm
I'm not on
slowly,
TikTok.
I don't know. I'm not either, but we are. And so I'm slowly like reposting our TikToks onto Instagram and whatever. But I'm getting some engagement over there. People have been like, oh, cool, I'm going to download it, whatever. So I'm just kind of recapping all of our episodes. It's going to take me my whole life. I'm on episode 7. There's just so many of them, but um, just to get a little bit more out there. So I'm doing that. And if you have any suggestions or ideas, we've got a couple suggestions in on Instagram. So thank you for that, friends. And let us know. doomedtofailpod@gmail.com and doomedtofailpod on all the socials.
Sweet. I'll go ahead and cut things off. Thank you, Taylor.
Thank you.